This morning we want to welcome Sergio Palleroni. He's Associate Professor, University of Texas in Austin, and Bryan Bell, who's the founder of Design Corp. Everyone welcome Sergio, who's going to start, and Bryan.
Well, first of all, I'm intimidated. I haven't been a long time presenting something because I'm before teachers. You're going to see the Swiss cheese that my pedagogy is, and partially because you guys are really trained to be teachers. And as I have 4 kids, and they're all in different parts of your educational spectrum here, and I'm just kind of in awe of how thoughtful and integrated and and in a sense, how you make sense out of my kids when I can't make sense out of my kids. And partially because, as university professors, we're never taught to teach. We're taught to specialize, and then whether we can communicate that specialization is a good question. So forgive any mishaps and stuff like that. The second thing is that it's great to be presenting with Bryan, who's a close friend, and we just came from collaborating for 6 weeks this summer in New Orleans, which is a place that's in everybody's minds. And it seems, and then the third happens, it's amazing, is that you're actually, there's a show outside, and it has a couple of projects that we've been involved in. One is the Katrina Furniture Project, which Bryan and I are involved in. And I'll talk about it at the end. And then the second thing is the solar kitchens that we've been making in squatter communities in Mexico, where I think you got popcorn from, right? Yeah. Even that one, that's made of just like recovered aluminum and still too hot. But anyway, so I'm calling it, educating civic environmentalists, and because I think over time I've kind of defined my mission to be twofold. One part of my mission is that I'm trying to teach university students to become civic members of the society, to become contributing members of society, reflective members of our society, people who think about their role in society. So kind of civic in the Greek, kind of broader kind of responsibility, and thinking that means that we think about others and we include others and we participate in processes which create democracies. And the other part, because environmentalism, because not just it's strictly in the green sense, but also in the kind of broader sense of kind of thinking that we share a kind of environment, whether we're rich or poor or African or South American or wherever we are, and that environment is actually something that we cannot, we can't screw around with, and we've been kind of thoughtless about it. And so that really, my empowering thought is that they both belong in the same basket. That being civic is about being considered to others and the resources of others, and we can't just grab all the resources, and we need to share them, and we need to share them among ourselves, and we need to also know how to mediate all sorts of things that, all the problems of our society. So my task is I'm a professor at Texas, but I actually, but I'm also head of a group, a co-founder of a group called the Basic Initiative Building Sustainable Community. And at our heart, there has been 2 kind of challenges. One, to try to serve the underserved, like Bryan has as well. And then also, on the other thing is so in a way, it's the sustainability of cultures and people, and on the other side is the sustainability of our environment. So we normally think of the environment as this kind of bucolic, there's outside in Mexico, beautiful settings. But the truth is that most people live, like this is just about 10 miles down from there, most people live in growing metropolis. This is in 1992, we started working in the squatter community in central Mexico. It was 85,000. By 2000, it was about a little under 1 million. Now we're at 1.8 million. This factory produces there's 280 some pharmaceutical companies that produce close to 20% of our pharmaceutical needs, all concentrated in one area in Mexico. This is where the birth control pill was arrived at and produced first because they were afraid to produce it on American soil. So, and we get results like the fact that once in a while they flush out the factory and all the women go sterile for months. So, but normally when we're taught about environmental issues, we are taught about it. We read the newspapers and everything, and we read facts. Like these are the facts having to do with building, which we now know is the biggest culprit on environmental impact. It's not the lowly car that we like to know, but it's really actually buildings, which account for 40% of our environmental load. So how do we make that lesson, which seems so abstract? My students come with me and look at the newspaper and say, look, oh my God, look at this, read this, you know, and it all comes through newspapers, through news, it's all alarming, it's all, you know, kind of, you know, what do you do with this? How do you begin to act on it? How, you know, they feel disempowered, they feel like, you know, they can't affect change. And at that age, when you're young, and now we should as well, you want to affect change. You want to know that your role in this world will contribute to change. So we have developed a pedagogy over the last years. You'll recognize probably most of these people. Of course, we rely heavily on Dewey, the idea that taking the students out, service learning, this idea that, you know, you can take students out in service community, that actually creates the kind of the basis of the civic kind of sense, but also expands the nature of education. We also rely on the idea of participatory action research, which tells us that part of our knowledge is created within the classroom, but a complementary part is created outside the classroom and cannot be recreated in the classroom in textbooks and things like that, and PR. And also reflective learning, the kind of the idea that we take action and then we reflect on it. That we don't just kind of move on to the next lesson, but we think about, well, how has that action impacted us? So we try to roll it all up into programs of outreach. And I take the students out of the context university and send them out. And we take them to a larger idea that we've created with Berkeley many years ago, the kind of idea of sites of learning, sites of learning can occur within the classroom, they can also occur out in the community. And they most importantly occur when they become places of exchange between community, between members, between environment, between students, all that kind of stuff. And so we created this kind of little pyramid. Everybody has an educational pyramid. And we take the students from various disciplines, get them to sign on to a problem, you know, HIV in Africa, this squatter community needs clinics. We've done a lot of clinics. And the Solar Kitchen, the one that popped the corn, is part of one of, you know, it's in that squatter community SAW, which has the pharmaceutical company. So they sign on to this project and then usually dedicate about 1 year to 2 years. And part of it is classroom preparation, part of it is exchanges, getting ready, research, and part of it is implementation in the field. And all throughout it, engaging in long-term communication with the community. So we take them out of the classroom and in the context, the phenomena of the world, which is so empowering because you can't believe that you're being educated inside and into the context of very rich and different communities. And it's part of that's our pedagogical trick, if you could consider it, is that by taking them out of their normal context, out of their comfort zone, as I and other people have mentioned, they kind of out of the eye of the storm, where the world is changing, but we are in America, so we don't realize how much change is being inflicted by the practices we're participating in. If we take them out of the storm, then you realize, oh my God, you know, maybe what I'm doing is not right. And so you taking them out of the comfort zone helps the student to step out of his normal practices and comfort zone and begin to reevaluate significantly, you know, who they are and what they want to be. And in that, you actually, I think, you get a more significant impact in education. And so I'm a big advocate in community work for students and education. And in the end, of course, whatever we do buildings, we do sometimes education programs, sometimes we do development programs. Whatever we do, the final requirement we have of them is that it's not an exercise that's created in their minds. It has to be totally embedded and part of the community. So if you step down from that 30,000 feet off the ground, you know, satellite photograph that about 20 from the US survey, and now you can do it through Google, it's much easier. Anyway, and you get onto the ground, this is what it looks like, and it's developing, and it's this extraordinary ecology being, you know, kind of changed by people doing the work themselves, you know. And it's, you know, you realize that, you know, once you step on the ground and you take those lessons, students all of a sudden say, oh my God, I'm asked to apply my knowledge that what I'm getting in school, and I need to apply it to a solution. And that this is going to complement and going to be an application of my, yes, and it really is a tremendous challenge. And so we don't deny when we go out to the field that we have knowledge. We take all the knowledge we have created in school, and we complement it with experience that we're getting in the field, and between them and the experience that we're getting by communicating and becoming part of another community, becoming a community that we're not, but we belong in some kind of global sense. So anyway, and this is what is at the heart of our sites of learning. Now, fundamental to that is that we live in the communities we serve. So, you can't just stay in a hotel and come in and do this. I mean, that can be effective, but the closer and more integrated, and the more you're part of the community you're living, you're serving, then the more you are, you understand the way of life, everything from the phenomenology of the quality of light and where the water comes and how to live in that city, instead of to, this kind of everyday contingencies of where you buy your fish or how you get the bus or things like that. And so I asked the students to start out with very simply by going out and meeting everybody in the community. We have a simple rule, 8 square blocks around whatever project we're doing. We go out and meet every single person, write their stories, their biographies, and we document it through drawings. You see, out there they're making notes on the plans, they're doing elevations, little drawings, and then they have to turn in a paragraph on each family. So you get these books made out of it. The other way we get the students out there engaged and beyond their comfort zone is that we have them conduct all the design process meetings on site, with the client. The client is the final arbiter. They are the people we're serving. And here we're doing a presentation for a clinic in the highlands of Mexico on site, the community. And we often conduct, as Bryan and I did with our dear friend Brad Guy, we conduct even our classes on site. You're often finding yourself re-engineering or designing and things, and you'll be doing it on site. So it's almost you're making transparent the whole thinking process behind, and you're opening yourself up to kind of accidental opportunities, like somebody walking in and suggesting something or introducing an idea you weren't ready. And it all gets negotiated because we're architects around the act of building, which is a very physical, time-consuming, economically challenging, but it can be manifest in many different kinds of actions. And we have done actions, everything from, I was mentioning my nephews, we built a movable theater for their elementary school in DC to building schools in squatter communities. So it can take many scales, and it can take scales from here in a project in a squatter community. We've done, I think we're up to 54 projects this summer. We've done projects like, we take on the challenges nobody else will take on, like converting a waste dump into eventually a clinic, a women's clinic for reproductive health and for children. And so that waste dump becomes we revitalize it to show the potential for it to become a garden again, for the ecological potential. And in the middle of it, we put things like the water treatment zone. We celebrate with found tiles so that even waste and the things we hide become transparent, that kind of transparent. And we might put, like we did here, a mural showing how the water cycle is being integrated into the classroom. And I think this wasn't intentional, but I realized that this is perfect because 3 junior high school teachers that came down with us from Seattle actually created this mural, and they made it out of tile and put it up in the clinic so that people going there could understand how this clinic not only represents a place you went to get treated, but a place which made you aware of what it took to be for a healthy environment. So it shows how the water is recycled. The final challenge, of course, is that the building doesn't stand out and say, look at me, but becomes part of the fabric. So here in this little squatter community, here are all the houses, they're along here. There's actually, this is the woman who set up a hair salon because we had so many students. We had like 40 students over 2 years building this. And here starts the clinic. You see, we broke it up into a series of segments so it doesn't overwhelm the scale. But a lot of little businesses started because, all of a sudden this became a new center. And so it fits in, we created some new businesses, became an economic model. And this is the education center, which is at the very corner, and it's a bus stop so people can come in and be educated. This big salon, you see the big windows above this wall that contains it. And first thing, we put up this announcement, and first thing, some kid went up and wrote some nasty thing on it. But by then the community was so involved and so bought into the idea that they actually said, let's just let them at it. Yeah, I thought, great, that's fantastic. So we started a mural program, and I had this beautiful photograph we gave an award after the first year for the best graffiti. And every year we give a graffiti award, and so it's become like the blackboard of the kids. And if you do it all really well, then kids, it becomes a place of celebration, becomes embedded in the community. This is the day of the opening of the clinic celebration. And our work has happened everywhere. We've been working in, our only requirement is that people are in need and that we can have effective action. And we also have a requirement that we don't determine the agenda of the community. The community determines its own agenda. We step in and we offer design and development services. So we don't politicize. So that's Africa. We've been working with AIDS communities for several years. We haven't in the last couple of years. We've been working in low-income single mothers housing in the Sonoran Desert, which is an area that's extraordinarily beautiful, but because it's become the breadbasket of America, has become the place of highest cancer rate for women in the world. And then we did single mothers housing, which is built on microcredit lending so that the women can actually afford to build, design, and create their own homes and finance their own homes from the meager salaries that they make. And we also teach about credit society and form small groups of homeowners who support themselves with the credit service and become homeowners. And then continue to be a microcosm of support afterwards. And we're doing the same in Austin, Texas. We're working with Hispanic communities to rethink the alleys, which the city doesn't want to deal with, into community gardens, in which are embedded now, we hope, a series of ecological little houses, tiny garden granny flats, which will hopefully provide housing for people who can't afford the big house. And then, so we've been wandering this is like a catalog of pieces. We did a visitor center for a community where the Dalai Lama's relocating in India, which was based, and this is where listening makes a difference, which was based on the fact that the first few months we had all our community meetings under the big banyan tree. And you realize there's a little granite bench that goes around the entire banyan tree. And what people do is they sit around the edge and people stand in the middle and they have community meetings. So we decided that really the building needed to be like that. Not only because it was such an extraordinary meeting space, and the open space, under a tree was really the best and most comfortable space we were in, but because of also the ecological function the trees did. So I told my students, let's make sure that when we leave, our building makes a net contribution. It creates a space under shade, which in the end creates something better than what was there. Let's not become the kind of vicious cycle that we have as humans with the environment. So it has a huge roof, collects solar energy, creates this big ventilated space where people live. Here's a little ecological diagram. That's a lot of function. It has these beautiful catenary roofs that we learned from Indians how to stucco. And the roof is made from packing crates for things they ship to America. And then, like the tree, it gathers water from the roof. We celebrate it through the streams that go around the edge, gets gathered in a big tower, and then supplies the community. And we've been doing, I'm going to quickly take you through these. We've been doing the same. 2 years ago, I was invited to Taiwan and China to help set up similar programs. And I'll show you briefly the one in Taiwan. We worked with a community which was interestingly being displaced by the same people who brought us to help them create the program. So I got the students out there giving shit to the administration, and we did a mural program where the university was cutting this gigantic boulevard through the things, and we created a series of murals here showing the insides of all the houses that were destroyed. So here you have a perspective of this family that was displaced by the university expansion. But then we got really carried away and decided we're going to make the street, which was going to be like a concrete nightmare, into ecological bioswale, a kind of a green space, which the city has so little in Taipei. And we started very simply, simple actions often are the most effective. This is my $200 solution. We got American gutters, seeded them with growing plants, and tapped into the gray water from the sinks from the bathroom. And by the time we left 8 months later, we had the whole wall covered in a green evaporative stream, and gave this university a nicer, more soft presence. So then the university president was really nice. He really loved this project, so he got us some federal funding to actually begin to green the rooftops, get the students out, create this kind of rooftops which are both ecological and green. And then we brought the water down and tore down the university's, the wall that separated the university, it's kind of, echelon kind of thing, from the city. And in this place, created a bioswale where all the gray water that ran off after we greened the building came down and was gathered along the street, this boulevard that's 8 lanes across, and now became this kind of green space which helped cool the street and make people's passageway, the 500 meters along the university now became a greenscape which was now shared with the community. And this was actually one of the top demands of the community being displaced, is that they didn't have green space and gardens. And now we have a series of benches along it where older people gather. We have a series of greenhouses in this green space where older people, grandparents, can come in and teach the university students how to grow plants. And it's really beautiful because they helped plant this. All the grandparents, we had hundreds of grandparents out there planting this entire bioswale, with the federal government coming in and helping to plant the larger trees, and then we had all the grandparents come and plant this, and then we set up little greenhouses and they run little seminars which the students attend. And it's become so popular now that we've actually have a series of little lakes. They have began to, like tooth decay, to begin to erode into the campus itself and create a series of green spaces. And in the midst of one of these green spaces, where it used to be a wall, it's a little house where we offer services to the community. The students now offer services. We're standing on one of the green roofs looking down on this greenscape. And it's a little house office where now stands right in the bridge between the public and the students, and has a beautiful staircase going up to it. And in it, at night, it's a little house that gets all its energy, water, everything from the thing, and it's an office. It's a model of how you could live even in a dense, incredible, second densest city in the world, Taipei, and show how this could even become a place of change. And students offer free services in architecture and engineering and planning to the local community, and a lot of scavenging. So actually, the skin of this building is made from timber bamboo that we went out and harvested at night from the mountains. You have to cut the tree. See, I learned something amazing. You have to cut the bamboo during a full moon because then all the sap goes up, makes for a better dry thing. So anyway, so the story behind two projects that you've seen here. One is the solar kitchen. Again, back to that squatter community. It's the site of 22 of our projects. Anyway, it's interesting. Community. This is a school built by the community about 15 years ago, and typical of them, servicing little kids in the community. And the women who were at the heart of this, and it's really amazed, women's organizations have become at the heart of change in much of the developing world. I think all but four of the 4 or 5 of the projects have been headed by women that we have taken over the last 20-some years. And here in this case, the women, as they do in many Mexican communities, so this is an example of how you can engage community. They just simple thing, they get together, cook outside the school, and they offer the kids at cost lunches, so they don't have to eat the bad stuff they may get right there. So here they go. Sorry, forgive my language. Anyway, so we came up with this idea with the head of the school, and now we've done actually 4 of this, one prototype before this one, of actually integrating, not having the women sit outside, but maybe bringing the kitchen inside the school and making the school more a complex institution. So it became, and the idea behind how to cook it, we learned in India. When we were working on the project pavilion, the visitors pavilion for the Lama, we became peripherally involved in a big project from France to convert solar energy into cooking. And this became a huge solar kitchen that could cook for 1,000 people, 1,000 families, sorry, even more than that. But what was beautiful about it is the Indians ran into a problem. They said, listen, man, if we order the beautiful mirrored glass from Germany, it's going to be about $180,000, which is about, 90% of our budget. So why don't we make it out of all these little vanity mirrors that we can buy in the market? So we used the same idea, bought vanity mirrors in Mexico. They're about 20-some cents a piece. And then we strung them on a scaffold made from old bicycles and found steel. And this is the larger version of the one you see here. This is 14 feet across. That one's 3 feet, I think. Anyway, and it has a mechanism like a grandparent's clock. It has 2 weights, each one filled with concrete. You time it, and then it follows the track of the sun and focuses its rays all the time on the cooking stove and cooks the material, and it's incredibly hot. I mean, about 1,800 degrees. You can easily burn something if you don't watch it. And here you see the counterweights over here. It's beautiful. It costs about $300 to produce, and it saves an incredible amount. So it's made from old bicycles, made from found material, made from local material, and here we are testing it, we're calibrating it, and we're trying it on the aperture of this building before it gets painted yellow and everything else. And this is when it's done. So it's a simple idea that transformed these, because all of a sudden they had this beautiful kitchen, naturally lit, students throwing all their heart at it, captured its own rainwater. It was an independent, showed the ecological potential to live in this area. So the students learned from the community, learned from traditional practices, came up with a new paradigm of how the school could be rethought, how it could be reutilized with the cooks, and created a place where the students arrive, they wash their hands here from rainwater, come up, get their food, and there's a dining room under the cover next to this beautiful yellow bin, and behind yellow kitchen, and behind it is the solar dish. And here, this is the kind of things that happen when you begin embedding community. The students, the little kids would play, they would play, I don't know, like you do with marbles, but they didn't have marbles, so they played with found pieces of little tiles. They would play marbles with little found tile, and we decided to collect it with them and make a fountain where they washed their hands on the way in from that. Or we took the broken tile dishes from a fight our neighbors had and made a counter. Or my kids in Seattle got their kids, the kids at their elementary school, to make them tiles, and which we brought and made benches to sit as they ate outside, and we in exchange made tiles and sent them back to Seattle. So just say this is 6 months later. If you do it well, the building entirely grows back into itself. Already the nature's coming back because you've been so sensitive to it, and it's become this kitchen in the garden, and it's this place they love. And because of it, they felt so empowered that they actually went back to the Department of Education and said, listen, we want to keep the school open after 3 o'clock. We think it's a travesty it's not open. So this is the first night we lit it up from the solar energy, and it had from its own energy. And so now at night the women can do cottage industries in there. This is the dining room becomes a place of work, and it's being lit up by solar energy. And what I love about this shot, my favorite shot, is that here's the power plant that powers all the pharmaceutical companies, and this little kitchen, which is now of the community, is powered by its own energy. It shows independence, it shows its own destiny. And as a result, the women, then continued this whole process and said, listen, we want to push this ecology stuff works well, and it has really created a kind of civic empowerment for us. Can we get us money to clean up the waste from our 7,000 houses? So we made a proposal to the World Bank, which is going to be completed in January. We've been dragging for 3 years on this, 2 years, I'm sorry. And we created this oxidation things where naturally they polish and treat the water from all the houses surrounding so that we can clean up their river, which has become a major source of contamination. Anyway, so I'm going to finish here with Katrina very quickly. We've had this disaster, and Bryan and I got combined with a good friend, Brad Guy, who is the master of recycling. And what we did is we decided to go to Katrina and not think of it as a kind of, we're sending them the kind of help like if they're needy, but thinking that Katrina represented a kind of problem that we all have all over the United States. And one thing that Brad Guy said to us, which stuck to me from the very beginning, was that if we took all the solid waste in America, you could build a wall of China around all 5,000 miles of our borders, water borders, every single year. And then we'd stuff it somewhere and we start collecting it again. And that's just solid waste. So we decided, if we can solve the problem of waste, of the throwing away of discarded and destroyed buildings, and we utilized it, not think of Katrina having destroyed that, but then now you have created a resource and material for the reconstruction, then maybe it will teach us, the rest of the United States, and New Orleans will become our model. And so here we started this recycling project with tremendous help from an organization, the Green Project, that had started this. And we thought of ways it could be reutilized. Bryan's going to talk to you about some cottages that were made from the material that was recycled. Another one of our uses, we're trying to teach people how they can be reutilized. But what we took the first time around was to think about the way that this could have higher value by becoming maybe the material for things like the pews. Over 900 churches were destroyed. Can we make the pews out of the recycled material? And that's what you see out here in the Katrina Furniture Project. and you saw the pews. There's also, we've made tables, which are going to the Oprah Foundation, to the people who are permanently displayed, making the boxes that you also see out there. And it shows that, you know, what is waste all of a sudden becomes the most beautiful object. And we had some tremendous collaboration with a great art center in Pasadena that went down and taught us something that we never know how to do, which is how do you get marketing? You know, how do you take an idea and you market it? So branding is a huge idea. How do you get the idea and how do you get it out so that people understand it? So they came up with this incredible thing of figuring out, I said, let's make it so beautiful, these projects, that it's like your Apple computer when you first open it up. It's like, you just want to slow it down because it's this extraordinary experience. And the process of opening will teach people something about where it came from, the material, the reuse, this new idea. And so they came up with this beautiful marketing. These are boxes where the furniture would arrive in. This is signage that would go all over. They said, to get a Katrina furniture project, it should be called a re-project. Reconstitute, reconstruct, rethink, you know, redo. So, and this is the first designs for what we hope will be the Katrina Furniture Project workshops, which will build this furniture in the communities. First one at the Green Project. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for including me in this wonderful institute you have. It's a pleasure to be here at the museum. I really feel that the exhibit upstairs or outside is a real tipping point. And what I want to talk to you about this morning is the relevance of design to the critical issues we're facing in the world and how that relevance becomes an opportunity to inspire and engage students of all ages. I have the luxury of teaching college and master's students, and we don't always even write lesson plans. So I also respect the integrity and thoroughness of the education standards that you all maintain, and I'm a certain beneficiary of. But I really feel that we're at a tipping point, and I'd like to challenge your definition of design, because my generation has been fairly worthless in terms of addressing the issues I'm talking about. I really believe it's the rising generations that are going to be able to embrace this new approach to design and be much more relevant through design. So I sort of give you that responsibility with the students you're teaching, and I'm very optimistic about what they can do. Essentially, design has so much unrealized potential at this point. The benefits of good design could do so much more for so many more. Currently, the service of design is an elite service, and I didn't realize this till I got out of graduate school. It's only for the very few. They are served to excess by market forces while we ignore a large part of the population in the world. In the US, only 2% of new homebuyers work directly with architects. So let this statistic be symbolic of the little we do now and the great amount that design could do. How can we expand the practice of design to serve the rest, the great number currently underserved, and for us all to play an active role in the social changes we face in the world? Okay. Or to put it another way, how can designers be more like Batman? I think my relevance to you all is that my brain stopped somewhere between K and 12, so I might be able to relate to some of your students pretty well. But let me show you some of the issues that you might not define as design issues. Yes, I see you all are defining design as keeping rain off. That's great. That's just a slight beginning. Disaster relief. This is a project where you don't just ship a tent, you ship a clip. And people take whatever salvage material they can, take the clip, put it together. And we actually saw some of these down on the Gulf Coast. So instead of shipping a box of a tent, you can ship 1,000 clips, make many more tents. That's the type of, disaster relief. Yes, that's a design issue, but we have so far to go to real solutions. Transportation. This was a proposal done by a college student in Atlanta. He looked at Atlanta and said, hey, you know what? We have a very bad metro system. just goes this way. Why don't we take these abandoned railway lines that ring the city and make a new beltway? He sent letters to the city council. The city council has adopted it. It's a multi-billion-dollar program. So, transportation, design issue, creative issue. Immigration, this is about a way of crossing the border. I heard somebody from the General Services Administration describe a border crossing as a combination of a gatehouse and a jail. What a pathetic way to introduce people into our country. Teddy Cruz, as a brilliant designer, California, this is his way of combining cultures in a welcoming, beautiful way of crossing the border. So immigration, you might not think is a design issue. Big design issue. This is a project by my wife, little town in Alabama. Their primary problem was unemployment. Does a designer leave the table? No. The solution was, we asked, why is there unemployment? There's no child care, there's no job training. So she proposed a child care job training center. The job training center was just completed 2 weeks ago. We're still working on the child care center. So unemployment, it's not just keeping rain out. Unemployment, a design issue. So that's just a quick little survey of how I think the greater role of designers can become. I started using this term in 2000 at a conference in Princeton, and I guess we're making some progress because now we're at 90%. So I think we're serving more of the population apparently. But this is actually the mission. I run a nonprofit. I'm really more of a nonprofit executive director than an architect. But I think what's exciting about the future is when designers are hybridizing their professions. And so after this week, I hope you all feel that you are full designers. You should. And combining designing with the expertise of teaching is an incredibly powerful way of addressing these other issues in the world. My own work has mainly to do with migrant farm workers. I'm not going to talk much about it, but these are some of the solutions I've come up with working with migrant farm workers over the last 15 years. I was originally drawn to migrant farm workers because they're really sort of the bottom of, they get the worst housing, the mobile homes that nobody else wants to live in. These were some that were hit by a hurricane in Florida. And these are some interiors from mobile homes that did not have hurricane damage. This is what they live in. So this is a solution we came up with. It's hurricane resistant. We actually get federal funding to help promote its building. So that's just some of my own work. But now I really want to talk about my work with students. And I'd like to try and simplify this whole notion of design. When I was in high school, I took an architecture class, and basically what I thought I was supposed to do was copy Corbusier, okay? I really hope that you can instill in your students or remove that baggage and approach design in a much more simple, broad way. So here is my assignment to graduate school students. And so what I hope to show you now is transferable, I would hope, to any age, any amount of resources. I hope I'm not frustrating you by showing you what graduate students can do, but maybe there's some relevance for your lesson plans as well. I teach once a year for a week in Barcelona. So I gave them that project. One of the students travels to school on the subway. She noticed that there was a place on the subway where nobody stood because there was no place to hold on to. So in 36 hours, she found this project, she designed this project, she installed the project, and then she actually sat there, here she is, being anonymous and listening to people respond to her design solution. And it was 3 a.m. in the morning. She wanted to do it in red. She could only find black, which turned out to be a bad idea because it looked like some kind of memorial or something, so people were a little hesitant to. But, people were, she also overslept a little bit, so she didn't get to test it out at rush hour, but which is when it really would have worked. But you know, it's interesting that she put up a statement that says, hold on tight, this is my contribution to the city, okay? Another really important aspect is communication as a skill. We're taught communication in design school. What that really means is talking. It's not we're not talking about listening. So the ability to get some students out of the classroom, even talking to their parents. You don't say, what design needs do you have? You say, what problems do you have? What challenges do you have? And then how do you take that answer back and find a design solution for it? This is a student from NC State. I love this photo because what we're doing is out there interviewing farm workers and trying to figure out what needs they have. And so here she is trying to remember her high school Spanish in order to say, how much privacy do you want in the shower or something like that. So you know, when they're engaging, when they're applying their education, it really puts a different perspective on it. So that project, we actually found that the bathrooms were the main problem. This is a farmer that let us redo his bathroom. As bad as this bathroom is, the worst part of it was there was no natural air or natural light, which are free. So I want to dispel the notion that you may have that design costs more, okay? That is absolutely not true. That is baggage we all carry, baggage that we need to reevaluate. So this is the student's new bathroom. Believe me, there's a lot of natural air and natural light. It's a really important act. You know, students at least in the design studio, it's all in their head. When they actually get their hands on real materials, it becomes something else. It's mind and body. We call it design build, but really what it is a thought, then an action, then a rethought, and a reaction. This is a roof made out of totally free material. The student came up with an idea about making a sort of a Mexican tile out of barrels. It took us 3 different types of barrels to work it out, but it was a really interesting process of, again, mind and body. And eventually we came up with this. These are actually from cotton mills in North Carolina. They don't use them anymore. There are thousands of them in any color and diameter you want. And once we figured it out, we put it up in about 4 hours. Different salvage material. We didn't steal the signs. We got them from Durham Department of Transportation. But my point is that having students look at materials, think about materials, is a very, it's almost a sculptural approach that really, I think, can happen at a lot of levels, certainly in high school, rather than sort of thinking, well, this is, you know, this is a sign, this is how I use a sign. Well, what is the material? What is the graphic quality of this? How else could you use this effectively? Again, it's not about cost, it's about a thinking process, a sort of a search for opportunities, a discovery process. So if you remember one thing from my talk, it's, you all may know the story of stone soup. I have a 3-year-old, so I've brushed up on it recently. If you want the PhD version, it's called Asset-Based Development. And it's by a guy named Kreutzmann at University of Michigan. I'm more comfortable with a 3-year-old version, okay? So let me give you all the 3-year-old version of what my design process is. You approach a community or a person and, well, let me review for you high school teachers, let me review stone soup. These soldiers come to town, they have no money, they're hungry, they get some stones, they say, we're going to make stone soup. People start to gather around, somebody says, well, I'll give you some water. Somebody else says, well, I'll lend you my pot. Somebody else says, well, I have some extra turnips. So eventually they make this delicious stew that feeds the whole village, okay? The role of the designer is to be those soldiers. You are sort of a facilitator, a coordinator, and that's a good, obviously, a role as a teacher. But you do not come to that town with a recipe and tell people to go get that. You do not have a preconception. The soup is obviously inexpensive. That's one of the main points here. This is not about getting French herbs to make the soup, that wouldn't work in stone soup, okay? So this is what resources do you have? How can you put them together? What is the challenge you face? How can those resources match the challenge, okay? Nobody has more resources than they have. Capped, you know? You all, I mean, I dated a woman who taught art. So I know she got 3 pieces of construction paper per student per semester. So believe me, I have some understanding of what you all face. I'm not challenging you to get an increased budget. What do you have? What can students come up with? And what are the needs they can address with those materials? I'm going to show one project I taught at a place called the Mural Studio. Again, dealing with sort of the lowest asset holding community. But one of the assets this community had is this is in Alabama. This beautiful red clay, this sort of sublime landscape, these deep woods, the red clay, and usually a dark, deep blue sky. So these are students out there living in this community and building solutions. So stone soup, okay? They decided they want to do a public structure for this little community called Mason's Bend with about 20 houses in it. It's at the end of this dirt road. There was this empty school bus sitting on this site. We agreed on this site because there are 3 main families, and this was right between all 3. It also was where everybody came to get their mail. It's also where the students caught the school bus. So it already had this sort of public presence. So our students said, well, here's a school bus. Let's take it. Let's cut it up, reuse it, metaphor of education and rebirth. Okay, so off go the designers in the total wrong direction. And here's where communication comes in. Fortunately, we asked the community, what do you think about that idea? They said, that's a terrible idea. They said, somebody sold drugs there. There are snakes in that. Sort of every archetypal evil, you know, that a little town has, they associated with this school bus. So a little warning. Students love to just run off in the wrong direction. And if they're not engaging in a conversation with that end user, it may be teaching the wrong approach. And believe me, almost all designers in school these days are taught the wrong approach. We have hypothetical clients. We have these hypothetical conversations in our head. We get out of Yale graduate school. We go and meet a real client. They're interfering in our process. You laugh, but this is when I got out of graduate school, I got the job I wanted in the whole country here in New York City with a guy named Stephen Hall. And he actually made this statement that was published in a magazine. I agreed to do this house because the client promised not to interfere in the design, okay? You think about that. Think about if you were a doctor and you said, come to me, I'm going to do whatever surgery I feel like. I don't really care what you need. I mean, people wouldn't go to doctors. People would only go to 2% of the doctors. That's why architects are so irrelevant, okay? That's our attitude. So please, don't do that, okay? Anyway. So there was no public spaces in this community. There actually was a Frank Gehry doghouse, though. They were really lucky to have that. But what we did, we took that dirt as an asset. We said, this is beautiful, and as Sergio said, it's not just about saying this community has problems, it's about sort of what is the poetry here, and how can we take that asset that characterizes this, which is dirt, okay, and how can we make something beautiful out of that? So this was our sort of test case. You can add about 5% Portland cement to that dirt and make an extremely strong wall. And let me talk about, I think the last point I have to make is about collaboration, because every designer thinks they have the best idea, okay? And again, that's what our educational system is teaching designers to think. How do you get people to contribute as a team and believe that that is the most effective process rather than my idea is the best? It once again is asset-based design, because a design idea is an asset. So just like those people bringing things to that soup, everybody's going to have some good idea about something, okay? It's not all one person's soup, okay? If you had that, you would have just had water for soup. So this is kind of the quick little models they do at the Rural Studio, just throwing ideas out there real fast and letting other people say, hey, that's a good idea, let's use that one. It's not about defending your own idea, it's about identifying other people's good ideas. This is sort of near the final model. There you see the final project. One other little sort of a remaining idea, we actually got, there's a place in Chicago, one of the students was from Chicago, and for one day a month, anything you can push out of this junkyard is $100. So he took all the windows, passenger and driver's side windows off cars, took a hood of a car, turned it over, put them on there, shoved it out for $100. He said he bottomed out his Toyota all the way down to Alabama. But here you see, okay, $100 for that wall. A little bit of an idea from that bus kind of still stayed in there, but it was, you know, it was not the, so it's a really unique, graphically you can't really see it, but every sort of little inch is different just because of the shapes. So this is their public space that sort of, and you know, one wonderful thing about this was the South, one terrible thing is the South deals with poverty by hiding it at the end of these dirt roads. The secretary at this program didn't believe our data about poverty because she doesn't have to drive out these dirt roads, she doesn't have to see it. Well, one of the best things that happened was at our sort of ceremony of ribbon cutting, we invited a lot of people from the greater community to come out and see this community and realize what level of poverty there was. So it was really, sometimes the best parts of design are the non-design impact, and I think really getting other members of the community to come out and see the real poverty faced in these small little hamlets was probably one of the biggest impacts that project had. Again, just another project. This was for a bus shelter for a city in Asheville. Here you see, I just want to show this. This is like the first 3 times we tried to get something right. And you know, detailing may sound like something only graduate students do, but I would encourage your students to think about, you know, how materials go together. What is the point? It's a mini invention is what it is. It has a very specific goal. The materials need to cooperate. So here's our final detail, okay? That's what we wanted. You can see how bad those first 3 were compared to this final detail. There's the Iwo Jima shot you always have to have for your design build projects. So this was a bus shelter, but it had a bigger impact. This community also wanted a landmark for their community, and they also wanted an entrance to their park. So we're always trying to have a bigger impact with a small project. Limited resources, how big an impact, how many people can you help? And this one, I'm proud to say, was pretty successful. This is New Orleans. Again, Sergio talked about the incredible amount of material that's being put into our landfills. I'm from New Orleans, so I've been eager to participate. Another statistic, 50,000 houses are being demolished. If you redirected just 5% of that waste stream, it would equal 53 million board feet, which would build 3,800 houses. Okay, I talk about, you know, stone soup. Here you've got 53 million board feet that is a problem. How do you make it an asset? And believe me, as you saw with Sergio's nice to include me in the project. All I really did on the Katrina Furniture Project was let him stay at my parents' house. But he's very kind to include me on it. It's a beautiful project. And it really takes this 150-year-old cypress. I mean, it's beautiful stuff. The richest people in America, I don't think, can buy that. And here it is, you know, going to people, displaced families that Oprah is helping through Habitat. So again, it's free. It's not, you know, design is not, this is some of the salvage material. And this is the project we worked on this summer. A group from Charlottesville was building these sheds for people still living in FEMA trailers. And you have families of any size living in a 1-room RV. not a 3-bedroom, double wide. They won't put those in a floodplain. So this is an RV. They've been in there for 2 years. You can physical domestic abuse is up because of the pressure. So this group started building these cottages, these sheds. I've got 6 minutes. These sheds as a way of giving them some storage. Their sheds were very simple. These were carpenters, so they were very like 12 by 16, plywood on the outside. Well, our students came down and said, and these were 22 students from all over the world actually, paid to come down and sweat, get out the job site at 7, go home at 7. I mean, you have to inspire students to put up with that and pay to do it in the Gulf Coast in the summer. So, so one of the clients, Billy Ray, they were interviewing him about his needs, as I'm encouraging you all to have your students do in this communication process. And at one point he said, I just want a shed. He's like, what are you doing? I want one of those 12 by 16 sheds. Well, let me tell you something. Billy Ray will never say that again, because fishing is his main enjoyment in life. This is to clean his fish. He wants to sit outside. There's a crossroads here. This is very strategic to watch people, in the rural South, you watch people drive by as your, pastime. So this is strategic for that. There's a heavy overhang. There's a bench here. Actually, see, the bench was a discovery during the process. They were building the project, and he came over and said, well, this is where I'm going to put my bench. And they were like, oh, what bench? So they actually put a bench. You can barely see it here, but they actually built in a bench. This is the west side. There's not, to try and keep it cool inside. There's also a light shelf here that Sergio and his wisdom helped develop. This keeps the rain out, but the northwestern light bounces up against that metal roof. There's also a workstation right in here, inside of that. So we made Billy Ray a design advocate. Billy Ray understands design in a way that I wish more people understood design. One last project, which is the one you can see outside here. I'm very proud. I had nothing to do with this, but I'm still very proud that architecture students were the first people to build anything in the 7th Ward in New Orleans. They were the first group to build anything new in the 9th Ward of New Orleans. Okay, so, and believe me, the sound of a hammer in those neighborhoods was very significant. Because there's 2 years, people haven't known it. People coming back here, is anybody doing anything? You hear a hammer down there, and it is a cause for optimism. So for them to mobilize, come down, and actually this is an interesting project. They actually built it at school with this fancy laser cutting stuff that nobody really knows what to do with at architecture schools. But here they put it to good use. They assembled it at school, disassembled it, went down, put it up in 2 weeks, okay? Now, I'm not suggesting your kindergarten students can do this, but I am suggesting, I do want to go back to what is the role that designers can play in the world and how can we address the most critical issues. And they had a big New Orleans style party in the neighborhood once they finished it up. So in conclusion, the 98% is not a monolithic group. It will take careful consideration of individuals to solve individual needs. From this view, the opportunities in architecture or design are almost unlimited, and the potential for our profession is truly exciting. I think a critical mass of work has been completed to demonstrate what is possible and that we're at a tipping point. I was taught that good ideas come from intuitive inspiration from within us. And again, this is my caution to you all. What I've learned is that the best design ideas come from understanding what is outside of us as well. That inspiration can come from the people we serve. Good design can address not just the physical needs, but the metaphysical as well. While these comments may seem critical of the profession of design, at the moment. I actually mean them in a positive way, and I'm extremely optimistic about the future of design. Society evolves, and let us hope that in this change is the improvement of conditions for all, not just the few. Designers, and specifically your students, can play a key role as we give new forms to the diverse needs of this future. Thank you.
Do your students, when they graduate, do they design for that 2%, or are there firms that go back and find some other percentage to work for?
I'm very proud of well, we also have AmeriCorps come for a year, and within the year, my goal is to give them all the skills they have to go out and serve the 98%. And I'm very proud. One actually runs the City College Design Center, one alumni, so he's already gone beyond me, you know. So I am proud of what they're doing. There are some problems with the Rural Studio. Out of thousands of graduates, I don't think any of them are serving the 98% because they're not given all the skills they need. But they do have other, I mean, the guy who started that said, once they step across that threshold into one of these houses and meet a family face to face, their life has changed. So I'm not going to say their lives are not changed. I believe they are. But in terms of career paths, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think one problem we have is, and this is a problem I constantly face with my graduates, you know, I think last couple of years ago we graduated, 1,000 students that went through it. And we realized that, you know, every student goes through, comes back, has their life effect, and comes back to me and said, so I'm going back, how do I do this in the context of the United States? You know, that's where and so Bryan's program, so I'll get them educated, but then hopefully some will end up in Bryan's program, which gives them a year to reformulate and engage the social sector or more. And so, you know, there is that kind of, as a society, we haven't met the young people, optimistic people that they're creating, or people who are seeing design as a broader agenda. So, but it's changing dramatically. I mean, we're talking, you know, I went to SOM because they're being impacted by the students. They say, you know, whatever you guys are doing, it's, you know, we're getting students who are better at collaboration, who are better with the clients, who bring a broader social and environmental agenda, which seems to be at the heart of where people are going these days. So even the big firms are making baby steps, but they're beginning to move towards, you know, towards realizing that there is a disparity, and we can't afford the disparity in a globe of limited resources. So.
One insight into your high school students, the Carnegie Foundation did a survey of why people went into architecture. 22% listed helping communities improve as their number one reason. That was the second highest reason. The first reason was an application of my creative talents. I obviously don't believe those are exclusive, but they actually, 22% put that above the application of my creative talents. So, and there are 35,000 architecture students in school right now. So you can imagine, we're not creating anything, we're just trying to serve an unmet need.
And that's not just true of architecture students. I've been working with Art Center and other art schools, and it's a groundswell in the art schools all over the country. So I think it's the phenomenon that's actually, it's on the upswing, so it's fantastic.
And again, I want to thank the Cooper-Hewit for this exhibit. I think it really is put it out there in such a, you know, such high stature. It's nice because we're often sort of relegated to the sort of background, and so to really give us.
We're usually in the kitchen.
We're usually in the kitchen.
Going back to your comment about that they don't get enough from the rural studio experience and that they need an additional skill set, what skill set would you add on to that?
The rural studio actually sets the projects up for them, and they just sort of engage at a moment late in the process. They actually don't have the skill of going out into a community and finding a project. I mean, when I was there for 2 years, I did that with them, because I thought that was so important, because you get out and nobody hands you this great project with the funding. What do you do? So I think teaching them how to start from the very beginning, which I do 36 hours. I did this 36-hour project because I was so frustrated with people telling me, oh, I can't do that. We've got building codes, or I don't have any money. I'm like, all right, 36 hours, I want a completed project, you have no money, go. One example, a guy at UVA, he found a project before he even left the room because all these chairs were breaking and they had them stacked up, they were going to throw them away. So his design was to come up with a way of salvaging all the chairs so they didn't throw them away. It was right there, 5 feet from us the whole time. So it's that mentality. I can go find a project. You know, architects sit in their office waiting for somebody to knock on the door, that 2%, you know, who already know what an architect does. I hate to use architect. I'm not a licensed architect. No need to be. I mean, I know how to design. That's all I need to do. Design means a lot more, not enough. But the term architecture is like, it's ruined itself to a large degree.
And one thing that we find with students all the time, and what's interesting about these projects is drawing the brightest students. I mean, the students we drew this summer, they were the top students at Harvard and Yale and, you know, in England and Italy. And it's true of the students who are drawing at UT and Washington and all the places we're teaching. And what we find is they're coming in and, yes, they are asking design questions and community questions, but they're really asking the hard question. The top thing they also want to ask us is, how do I finance this? How do I figure out how to get to the permit process? I mean, they're realizing, okay, they have a vision, and they realize it takes work, and it takes much more complex if they're going to get this out. And so I think that's one of the most encouraging parts of it. It's just the fact that they realize that, I mean, they're empowered. They feel empowered by knowing the facts. And that's why I kept proposing the thing about participatory action research, that if you take students out and you don't wait till they get out of school to teach them how to deal with the real world, but you start having them engage their real world within their curriculum, when they get out, they're much better at negotiating their ambitions and their, you know, and their good thoughts and good deeds with the realities of the world, because you're teaching them how to do that. So I think
one of the most successful days we have is going to a junkyard to look at that as resources. I'm sure your principals would flip out about that idea, but you know, but it's an immediate thing. What is this waste? How does it become an asset? And you could assign your students to say, design with things you find in the trash, and then they start looking like, well, what is that? What can styrofoam do? I mean, it's got insulating properties. It's waterproof. You know, well, that's not what I need. I need something. You know, so. Just to add on to that, because again, it's not about where can I get this money. It's like, what do you already have? Meredith?
Well, I just wanted to raise the point. One way of promoting this is also to make a more demanding consumer. And so civic leadership, public leadership, I mean, many of the students that these people are involved with will never be architects making those choices. But they are the people that control the outcomes of what architects do. So I think it's really important to think about exporting the attitude beyond the design profession and into the public sector where choices are really made and controlled.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because, you know, all the changes you're seeing through screen design and, you know, civic communities that people are demanding now and stuff, not coming from enlightened companies, coming because people like ourselves, they are asking for that. So, yeah.
This last question.
You brought up early on in your presentation the effect that the building industry is having on the environment. I know that a lot of work is being done in prototypes for green, intelligent, prefabricated housing. Now that that industry is that we're becoming more demanding as consumers, are there growing relationships between traditional sort of horrible fabricated housing companies, and then can that model of an intelligent, green, prefabricated housing mesh with the idea of context-specific, site-specific, community-specific needs?
Let me take that one first. The environmental movement in design has been very effective, and you know, corporations are embracing it for God knows what, you know, reason, but they are. We're actually, I flipped through a quick slide at the end. It had the bat signal. It said the Justice League, SEED. Well, SEED is social, economic, environmental design. So environment, you know, the environment is a big issue. It's not the only issue. So you raise a good question. Some communities have much bigger social or economic. You know, it's three legs to a stool, okay? So we're trying to learn from the LEAD, which is sort of the set of rules the green movement put out there for policymakers and architects to follow. And we're developing SEED. And actually, Meredith, the first event, I'm writing a NEA grant in 2 weeks to have a joint conference in DC with policymakers and designers to discuss this idea. So absolutely agree with you. So I think that's coming. I think we need to build on what we have, but so far, I mean, Brad Guy, he sees like the environment, and I'm like, well, but look at Patty. She doesn't want the bio-based insulation inside. She wants to spend that $5,000 on something else. You know, it's like very tunnel vision at times. So it gets.
Yeah, and
no, you got to give him the last word because this is where we disagree. So he's gonna. I don't want the last word.
Go ahead. So you're going to say.
She was going to wrap up.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that, yeah, it's, you know, prefabrication has been much maligned in the United States because it's been associated to mobile homes, you know, stuff like that, and manufactured housing. And of course, that's not been true in Japan or Europe, where manufactured housing is actually the higher end of housing. And they've been doing it for so long that their higher end has been slowly creeping down to where the Europeans and the Japanese have actually been making low cost, not relative term, but more permanent stuff. And that's actually driven Americans to actually relook at it because it's, you know, for 40 years it's been a no starter for us and in my line, and it's come back to influences. So there is a kind of scale. We're all looking to see how we can scale it up. And there is a wonderful project out of University of Virginia, EcoMode, which is attempting to look at how housing could be made of like modular pieces that would be put together and would have the advantage of economic scale, and how they could be put together. Then everybody could put it together like Legos and make a beautiful home. So there's some really encouraging signs there, and so it's coming. You know, I think to me, it's an incredibly powerful time to be a designer, because a lot of the things that stopped the early experiments of modern architecture, you know, modern architecture started out by making architecture egalitarian. They said, we don't need to build castles, everybody can have a house. You know, at the beginning of the 20th century, only 18% of people owned their own homes. Most of them lived in houses they were owned. So now we have mass home ownership and everything like that. It was made possible by this kind of utopian ideas modernism movement. But then architecture went on to serve very little. And in a sense, the new developments and technologies have made it possible for us to begin to increase the impact of design again, and to, you know, and to improve the everyday design. And you see it everywhere. Everybody's reading design magazines, you know. And so I think design has come back into vogue as a kind of, you know, as a kind of powerful tool, thinking tool. I think it's great. I mean, we see it on all the tables. So. We'll judge it tomorrow.
Yeah, they'll be back. They got a sneak preview of it. Sergio and Bryan are staying very kindly till tomorrow, and they'll be part of the panel that will review the projects you're working with Deborah's team. So you'll hear more from them again. But I want to thank you both, Sergio and Bryan.
Pleasure.